Okay, preparing to live stream the meeting. There's always this delay of like 20 seconds or something. There we go. And there we go. There. Okay, so now we are live. Okay, so good afternoon, everybody. This is our third installment of what I've been calling the Born Again series. It is a series of just simply interviewing Christians who I think are just really cool people who are stable and faithful and active in the kingdom and serving the Lord, and just finding out how did they become Christians. Because as that we've been told by God to proclaim his excellencies and to share the good news. One of the ways that we can do that is by looking at those who've gone before and say, well, how did they become a Christian? So today, thankfully, Shawn Highfill, he's a friend of mine. He lives in Quincy, Washington, has been willing to join us. And Shawn, just to give you an idea, is just one of those really great people who, he's one of those people that you can always count on. There are some people that you think if I were to ever give them a call and need something, they would just drop whatever they're doing to help. And that's the kind of guy he is. And one of the things that I like about being able to do this is that I get to introduce cool people that I know to other cool people that I know. And so I want to introduce you guys all to Shawn, and he has a lovely family. Shawn, maybe you could give everybody just a little bit of a background in terms of how long you've been a Christian, what age you became a Christian, a little bit about your family, just some basic background about yourself a little bit.
Sure. So been a Christian for, well, since I was 20. So
you got to date yourself.
Right. That's okay. That's all right. So about 27 years. Like Scott said, I have a wonderful family, wife, and 3 kids. The oldest just went through Florida college and is now living in Florida. And let's see. Like Scott said, we live in Quincy. We were trying to figure this out the other night, but I believe it was 6 years ago that we first met when you guys came over for the gospel meeting and we did the pumpkin patch deal and all that.
Oh man, yeah, I guess so, yeah.
We'd heard of you before from Tom and Debbie Bertram, who'd come from the Sumner congregation, but that was when we first met. So, and it was just one of those things where, like Scott said, just really cool people would give you the shirt off their back. To me, it was, we became instant friends. Like we'd known each other forever, him and I, my wife and Jenna. And so, yeah, just and you know, I jokingly, as we were discussing something else on Facebook, said, you know, if you need somebody to fill a hole for your Thursday afternoon, I'd be happy to do it. And I had no sooner sent the message than I got a response back saying, hey, how about next Thursday at 3? So everyone's pray for it.
Well, you know, it was one of those things where when you volunteered, I was really excited because, you know, not everybody is willing to do this. I mean, you do have to put yourself out there a little bit and everything like that. So, so what was so you converted at 20. What was your childhood look like? Did you grow up religious? Did you grow up atheist? I mean, what was the home life like? Was it very stable and went well? Were there problems?
So that's kind of the story in a nutshell, other than that, I think you and I, if I remember our conversation, our stories are similar in that the catalyst for us being here and all of this that we're doing is due in large part to our extraordinary lives. But we'll get back to that. I don't want to give too much away just yet. So yeah, childhood, all the way back as far as I can remember. I don't know why. I didn't know why at the time, but I always believed that there was a God. We weren't a super religious house growing up. I mean, I know now that I believe that that's because God puts that in you, that desire to look for something outside of yourself when the world doesn't recognize what that is all the time. But my parents were divorced at 8, and then I think I was about 8. And so a lot of time on my own because my mom worked several jobs to support the family. And so I grew up kind of early because I was on, you kind of had to fend for yourself in a situation like that. So, but again, just always, we celebrated Christmas, we celebrated Easter. Well, those are religious holidays. There must be a God, right? But the earliest I can remember is before my parents got divorced. We were Jehovah's Witnesses for about 2 weeks because my dad was finishing our basement and didn't know how to do the drywall. A gentleman he worked with knew how to do drywall, but he was a Jehovah's Witness. And the guy said, well, if you'll come to church with me, I'll help you with your drywall. So we went until the drywall was done, and then we were no longer Jehovah's Witnesses. That's anyway, may have been a little bit longer, but not much. But I remember being there, and I was young. I had to have been 4 or 5, maybe, in that ballpark. And I remember falling asleep because I didn't know what was going on. I'd never been there before. And I remember they felt really old to me, but I remember the old people being angry with me because I'd fallen asleep. And so I'm thinking, I don't want to be here, And so this is kind of the story of multiple bad experiences with religion. So that was the first one that I really remember. And then my neighbor across the street, they were, I don't know what the affiliation was, but he was about a year older than I was. I think we were 11, 12, somewhere in that ballpark. He was the drummer in the church band. And so he invited me several times, and I just, I kept putting him off and kept putting him off. I didn't really want to go. And finally I said, okay, I'll go with you. And so we get there, and it was church band. I mean, from the minute we walked in the door to the minute we left, they were playing and singing, and it was as close to a holy roller type situation as I mean, hands in the air, in the aisles, and no scripture reading, no explaining what was going on, no nothing, just music and people going amen. And I'm thinking, even then, it just didn't feel right. I mean, what's going on here? Why are you doing what you're doing? Right? There was no explanation for any of it. And I think I only went with him the one time. That was enough to freak me out. And I'm like, no, I don't want to be part of it. And then not too long after that, I was invited to some Baptist functions that I went to. This was long about 8th, 9th grade, something like that. Because I discovered girls, and it was girls who invited us. And so we went to this thing. Again, no real supervision. I mean, it was a quote unquote church function, but I don't remember talking about the Bible at all. There were no prayers, there were no readings. It was just this gathering to get kids together. And I wasn't involved, but there were boys and girls there who, did things that kids at a church gathering shouldn't be doing at that age.
Right.
So again, just not for me. It didn't make any sense to me. These people were kind of blindly following what was being done. And by this point, I'm starting to get interested in science and prove it to me, right? Show me with science. And you start to get in school, you're getting evolution and things like that. And oh, this is fact. And it's, so none of this supernatural stuff makes any sense. It's all got to be science and prove to me, in fact, that kind of deal. And so it just didn't really want any part of that. And then the next group, and this, I don't remember exactly where these fall, but then my sister started going to a Nazarene church. And she got on this puppet team where they were doing puppet shows all over the place, where they were
Okay. Yeah.
It's and and they would take it to the malls and various places, and she just loved it, and started trying to get my mom and I to come. And so we went a few times, and I go back to the Sunday school class, and I don't remember, I want to say it might have been that 11, 12-year-old time frame too. But they start asking questions, basic questions that I know now, but back then I didn't have a clue. I didn't grow up reading the Bible. I didn't do any of that. And I didn't know the answers. And all these kids in the class and even the teacher made me feel stupid for not knowing the questions or knowing the answers to these questions.
Okay.
And I'm thinking, that's why I'm here. I'm here. You can teach me those things, not so you can hurt me because I don't know. Yeah, it may be basic to you that Adam and Eve were the first two people, but I've never studied that before. And then we would go from there out to the auditorium, and the message would just be all about how God is love and all this, and love your neighbor and all this. I'm thinking, wait a second, I just came from a class where there was no love at all. And now it just fall in up here and be everything's great and God is love. That doesn't make sense either. So that was the last kind of formal religious thing I really went to.
Okay, so up until this point, so that's the last kind of formal religious thing that you go to. Do you know roughly kind of what age you were at that point?
That was, I think that was, I mean, we only went a handful of times with my sister. He actually stayed with them for quite a while and ended up going to the Nazarene College in Idaho, but we didn't continue to go. So probably at the latest, I would say 13.
Okay. So you've now hit your teenage years, and your experiences with religion have been varied, but you've seen kind of a sensationalism, an emotionalism. You've dealt with some of that hypocrisy of teaching love, but then mocking you, and then also a lack of answers. It sounds like, is that a fair way to put that?
Absolutely.
Okay.
So,
all while you are becoming more scientifically minded and hearing that kind of in this other section of life, there are facts and data and
exactly.
So, okay.
And at that point that I really kind of start to have kind of like mocking attitudes towards my sister and her continuing to go and the people that she's involved with, and just really pulling away from what I guess you would call formal religion in a big way, and really separated. And I was kind of a long-haired hippie musician in high school, and I did some things that I should not have done in those times, and which we all do, but religion was definitely the last thing from my mind. I started in high school. I had a neighbor who had a mom who was very much into the whole New Age movement and meditation and things like that, and kind of got into that for a little bit, more Eastern type ideas. Always, even though I on one hand I shunned it, I was fascinated by it and I was pulled to it because I knew there had to be something there, but I was never given anything solid to sink my teeth into. It was all kind kind of smoke and mirrors and fluff. Nothing that I would go, that makes sense to me. I'm going to get behind that. So kind of did that. It studied kind of some Native American ideas, that sort of a deal. And again, not much through those teen years and into my early, until, my 20s, in the age of 20, when I discovered the Church of Christ. So
one of the things that I find fascinating as I talk with people is that what you just said comes up over and over and over again, that there was this, you knew there was something there. I like the way you put it. You knew there was something there, but you didn't have anything to sink your teeth into. It's like you kind of keep coming back to it, hoping the meal will be better this time, but it's not, it's like, oh yeah, that still doesn't work for me. And I just think that that's the case with people who are good soil. I sometimes think that we forget when we're out there teaching people or trying to, we're looking for people who are probably dissatisfied, but still looking for a good meal.
Right.
Because that was very much my experience as well. It's just like, I just couldn't shake the thing. Man, I tried, but I just couldn't shake that there had to be something more to this. And I think, yeah, you and I have talked about, privately, that I think that there's a lot of similarity in you and I, and that journey of, you try a lot of different things and you kind of tried to abandon it, but you couldn't ever quite kick it.
Right. Well, and I think those earlier experiences too were more, I went not so much because I was interested as I felt bad not going with these people who kept inviting me to go. And that's only because I think what I had experienced early on was not real positive. And so somebody invited me, I'm like, well, he's my friend, I should go, and so I don't know that I was honestly searching. I knew there was something there, but it's just one of those things that was not hugely important. It was never brought across as being something hugely important.
Right. So when does that change? So you go through a decent portion of your teen years, and then there becomes some point for everybody that either there was a point of contact with somebody, or you kind of make a switch in your mind and go, I'm actively searching. Which one was it for you? Were you actively searching first, or was there a point of contact with somebody who kind of said, hey, you should be searching?
So this is where I think our stories converge, in that I was working in a music store, which most of the people on here probably don't know what that is anymore. CDs and tapes, again, dating myself. And this beautiful brown-haired woman walked in, and we got to know each other and started. So the funny story about how we met is we went out on our first date because she dared me to go across the mall and ask another girl out. And she said, if you'll do that, I can't remember, I'll buy you dinner if you do that. So I went across and I asked her out, and she shot me down, fortunately. And so then we started dating. And it was, she was getting pressure from her mom to bring me to services. She was already a Christian at this point. And at first I kind of resisted it because of my past experiences. And I thought, well, there's something special about this girl. So I better go see what's going on and, kind of keep the peace. It was my initial reaction.
Are you saying you were more interested in her than you were in God?
Absolutely, 100%. And so that's spot on. And so I went, and the first time I went, wait a second, this is this is different than anything I've ever been to before. I mean, yes, we sang and there were prayers, but there was, a couple of songs, and then we had a lesson, and the Bible was open and it was being read and it was being explained. And the other thing too that Nick did that really kind of shocked me, because coming from what kind of the world knows of religion, you expect the preacher to be some ordained position, somebody who's gone through training or whatever, has a degree from some theological seminary or whatever. And up to that point, nobody had ever allowed for questioning or allowed for the fact that they might be wrong. And Nick was like, well, this is what I think this verse means. If, it was a difficult passage or something that wasn't really black and white. I mean, you guys can study it out for yourself, but my take on the way this verse reads is this. And so there was just this wow moment. This can be done. You can understand the Bible. Somebody can read it. Somebody can tell you what's going on there. And I was shocked. I'd never seen that before. And so I went a few more times. I don't remember exactly how many times I went before I said, honey, can we? Well, she wasn't technically my honey then, I don't guess, but I said, can we study separately with Nick? I have questions I want to ask that I can't ask in. So, oh, sure. So we set up a class. I think it started on Thursday nights that we ran it moved from Thursday to Monday to Thursday to Tuesday to whatever. But that class ran for a solid, probably 16 years, I think it was, before everybody kind of moved away, studying various things. But we started with, I'm almost positive, I haven't looked closely yet, but I believe what we started with was the cards you're going through right now.
Okay.
A version
of it. The ones that I'm going through right now, I mean, I didn't create them from scratch, right? It's kind of an updated version of something that's been around for a long time. Because after all, the verses have been there all along, right? It's not.
Exactly. And so with Nick, he started with something very similar. I mean, just very basic. You got two options. There is a God, or there's not a God. Well, if there is a God, then what's the next step? And then what's the next step? And then what's the next step? And he showed me the verse, how it applied. And so we just kept studying. And then I believe it was a Sunday evening. And I don't have it marked down, sadly. I didn't think to keep track of it. But we got done and Nick made the invitation and we're singing the song. And I got up to go forward because I had come to the point that I understood what it was required of me. And it's funny because Ches didn't know what I was doing. And she reached out and grabbed my arm and almost held me back. She's like, honey, we're not done yet. Why are you getting up? And she's probably not happy I told that story. And so I went forward and I was baptized. And that was, like I said, that's been 20, actually it might be 28 years ago, because we'll be married 27 years this year. And we were together about a year and a half before we got married. So
one of the things I love about your story is you're talking about Nick, and that's Nick Nelson, right? That preaching there, Quentin, yeah, Quincy, and is that you're describing that you were so impressed that this was something you could do, you could study it and come to answers. But then when you described Nick teaching, you said, what he said is, I think this, but you should study it yourself. So he actually left room for the fact that he could be wrong. And I think that's a big thing, that actually his willingness to accept his humanity, the scriptures are good, but I'm still working on me, actually gives confidence to people who are investigating. It doesn't, it doesn't deter an honest person. I think it appeals to us. And, you know, I think that's worth taking a moment to mention, because one of the fears I think we have in sharing the gospel sometimes is the fact that, what if I don't know the answer? What if they ask me a question and I have the answer to it? Well, that's okay. You just say, I don't have the answer, but the Bible does. So,
Well, I mean, so the catalyst was, I refer to it as following the skirt in the door. I mean, it was my wife first,
yeah,
and then Nick took over. I mean, she was still continued to be an influence, obviously, but then you get into, like I said, somebody who can handle the word accurately, was not threatened by questions or unwilling to answer questions, or you know, a lot of what I got before was, well, you just have to accept that. Well, that doesn't work for me. I mean, why do I just have to accept that? I mean, I understand there are certain things in the realm of faith that you do just have to accept, but you got to give me more than that. And so, you know, Nick is really good about, and a lot of the preachers I've heard and met have been the same way, that are, you know, willing to study and answer questions and take time with people and walk them through it. And so,
yeah. Well, and I've never quite heard it referred to as following the skirt evangelism, but you know, I'm realizing at this point, all three of the interviews that we've done so far, each one of you guys has mentioned a pretty major impact of women in their life, whether that be women that are their wives or became their wives, or women that I think like in Buck's case, he mentioned that they came in the door and little old lady came up to him, and he's just a real big guy, and how that made an impact, or how they treated his kids and stuff like that. But I think we should just really get to the point where we stop underemphasizing the impact women can have in sharing the gospel. I mean, it's just a huge, huge impact, because it's the same for me. I follow the skirt evangelism worked with me too. And, but it only works when you have somebody of character. Cause I know, like your wife, Ches, she was not going to accept anything other than a quality guy who cared about God. And that makes a difference, right? Her principles kind of, she set boundaries. This is what's important to me. And that you were willing to engage in that conversation.
right. Absolutely.
So, and if you hadn't been honest, it wouldn't have worked, but I mean, you were honest. And so it does happen. It does happen a lot.
Sure. And it's, you know, that was kind of one of the things I was going to kind of leave with, is this idea that the ladies should be the skirt, right? That draw the guy in. And I'm not talking looks. I mean, my wife, I'm blessed, my wife is exceptionally beautiful as well, but there was so much more there in terms of her character, like you said, kindness, compassion, looking out for other people, just caring about you as a person and other people around. I mean, all of the things that we're called on to be as Christians, I saw in her. And as much as Nick was different in his teaching, she was different than other ladies I had met. And so, and the same would apply for guys, young men. Be the suit that a woman wants to walk down the aisle with, right? Be that character. So,
yeah. And the fact that you ended up kind of eventually studying with Nick, that point of contact doesn't happen without her. Right. So it's like, it's the Apollos and Paul principle. One guy waters, another plants the seed, but God gives the increase. Like, you don't have to do all of it, but your part you have to do well. And I think in particular with single Christians, you know, whether, and I'm glad you put it that way, the skirt or the suit, right? Whether it's a guy or a girl, the principle is still the same. Are you modeling that life? Are you showing it in your kindness and your mercy, in your honesty and your principles, your standards and boundaries that you set? Because it'll make the difference, and it'll draw the right kind of people too.
Right.
That'll stand out, and some people it'll repel. I mean, it will, right? There's gonna be some people who aren't interested in that, but those aren't people you want to be interested in anyway. So, okay, so you go to stand up to go forward to be baptized. Ches holds you back. But do you, and maybe you do, maybe you don't, but do you remember, was there something in that sermon that was the thing, or had you been thinking ahead of time and you just kind of know this Sunday's it, or did it kind of surprise you? What was it?
I don't remember the lesson itself being necessarily what kicked it for me, but at the end, when the invitation was offered, I had been studying, I had come to those conclusions. So in a sense, it was a surprise because I wasn't planning on it necessarily. I mean, it's definitely something I've been mulling over and thinking about.
But you didn't walk in that Sunday thinking, this is the Sunday I'm going to be baptized. Okay.
And it was a culmination of all the studying we'd been doing, and Nick presenting the invitation. And you probably have heard this many times over the years, where you preach something and you don't have any one person in mind, but tons of people come up to you afterward and going, how did you know? Have you been looking in my window? Nick does that a lot, where he's preaching and I go, wow, he's talking right to me. And again, that his invitation, and I think he probably could tell from our studying that I was getting close. And so I kind of remember feeling like he was selling a little hard that night. Extra good job of his invitation. And it just, it spoke to me, and I got up and went. So I don't remember what he said and all that. But.
Okay. So it was a culmination of all this studying, but then something that he said, kind of, you realized today's the day, and you stood up. So, when you look at evangelism today, and you look at the things that, when you compare what you saw happening that led to you becoming a Christian, and then you look today at evangelism, what would you say? How do I even want to put this? What would you tell others about evangelism that you say that I wish you would know this and would be doing this, because there's guys like me out there. Essentially, there's guys, you can't speak for everybody else, but you say, look, there's probably other guys out there like me. What would you want people to know?
I think when we start talking about evangelism, a lot of people get freaked out, and it's daunting to them, right? They think, oh, I have to go talk to these people about Christ. And maybe I'm going to say the wrong thing or do the wrong thing, or I'm not going to know an answer, like we kind of talked about earlier. And we also kind of feel like I've got to do it all. I've got to talk to this person, and I've got to throw them in my car and drive them to the building and put them in the water. And it doesn't have to be that. You already stole my scripture that I was going to say earlier from 1 Corinthians 3:6. I planted, Apollos watered, but God caused the increase. So it's little things. It's like my wife and her behavior and her conduct and the things that I saw in her that I didn't see in anybody else. It was the group of people that met at that building and any other building I've been to. You don't leave a Church of Christ building without shaking everybody's hand. Well, nowadays you don't, but you don't leave that building without shaking everybody's hand in there and having the little old lady stop you and hug you and genuinely be concerned about the fact that you're with them, taking time out of your life to be a part of their group. And so it's the idea of this isn't my thought. Somebody, I can't remember who it was off the top of my head, but the idea that you're putting a pebble in somebody's shoe and it just rolls around in there and it starts the ball rolling, thinking and they're thinking and but you may have 10 minutes with them, but they get passed off to somebody else down the road that has more time with them and more time, and you started the ball rolling. And I think we feel bad when we don't make the sale, so to speak, with somebody. So just, I would say, live your life the way God's asked you to as an example to other people, and take those opportunities for what they are. They don't all have to be slam dunks.
Yeah. Man, I don't know where you heard that before, but that, put the pebble in their shoe, that really, I think that's a great way to visualize it. You just want to give them something to think about that might be a little bit of discomfort. I mean, the pebble in the shoe is not a comfortable thing, but but they got to live with it. And I think honest people, that's one of the character traits of an honest person, is they're going to deal with it. And they might not deal with it right now. I mean, look, I know for me, I pushed that thing down the road for a while. But eventually you have to deal with it. And this idea of doing it all at once. So, I mean, none of us change immediately. And so you're just part of that process, and God's the one giving the increase. So, yeah. So here's the flip side to it.
Sure.
So that's what you wish Christians knew. Let's imagine, because we live in this digital age where people are watching this all over. I mean, I'm kind of been humbled by how far some of this stuff goes. That ironically, during this pandemic, we're reaching places I would have never reached before, which is something pretty cool. But if somebody was not a Christian and they were hearing this, what would you want them to know?
Wow. I would say that there is hope, that with all of this uncertainty and stuff going around, there is a place of comfort, and you can have it if you look for it. I mean, what more can you offer someone right now than a release from all the fear and anxiety and uncertainty that we're going through right now? Reach out to somebody and start asking questions if you're thinking about it. Send Scott a message and ask him your questions, or listen to the Ask Your Preacher. I don't know if that's a podcast now or what that is, or how you do that. You speak, but anyway,
it's the website now, askyourpreacher.com, and you just go and you can ask questions or look at other people's answers, even if you're nervous to ask them yourself. But yeah, thanks for the plug, by the way.
There you go. So, just, you don't have to go through this alone. There's comfort in being a member of the Lord's body. Okay.
Well, Shawn, thank you so much for taking the time. I know you're a busy guy. You are Shawn, by the way, is a business owner and an essential business owner. So he's a very busy guy right now. While the rest of us maybe have a little bit of hiatus from work, Shawn is busy keeping everything up and running. And so thank you for taking the time to do this. Really just appreciate you and your family. Please say hi to all of them for me. And to those of you who are listening, thank you for giving us some of your time. And we are going to have another Born Again live stream here next Thursday. It'll actually be in the morning next Thursday with Steve Wilkes. Steve Wilkes is one of my favorite people, and you could label this Scott sharing his favorite people. That's like would be another way to look at this live stream. But Steve has a very interesting story, a little bit different than the other guys, and so you might want to stay tuned for that. But we'll be live streaming in the morning. He also is an essential business guy, and so isn't able to do it at 3:00. But since these are live streamed and recorded, we're going to do it earlier in the day on Thursday. So thank you, Shawn, so much.
You
And
betcha. It was fun.
yeah, lots of fun. And just say hi to your family, and we'll talk to you later.
All right. See ya. Bye bye.
Okay, see you. Bye.